when other tribes are still using stone axes to hunt. Our tribe is already carrying Gatling machine guns and slaughtering all around. When the neighbors next door are still drilling wood to make fire, we directly use gas stoves to ignite fire and eat delicious roasted meat. All because I just transmigrated to a primitive world and was knocked unconscious by a young girl wearing animal skins who carried me back to the tribe. In my daze, I felt a pair of hands groping my body. This jolted me awake. Seeing me wake up, the girl pointed at my belt and said somewhat frustratingly, "What is this thing you are wearing? Why can't I untie it at all?" I finally came back to my senses and finally understood my situation. But just as I tried to struggle, I found myself tied up by a vine. Seeing that I still wanted to struggle, the girl smiled faintly and said, "Man, be good and don't waste your energy. Since you were taken down by me, then you are now Ulala's man. If I can't untie it, then I won't. I will directly cut it off." Saying this, Ulala stood up and fetched a bone knife. Seeing that I couldn't resist, I also planned to accept my fate. But this girl is quite good looking. She should be at least 18, right? Just as Ulala raised the bone knife to cut open the belt, a sudden thunderclap pealed from outside. Ulala immediately stopped what she was doing and said in pleasant surprise, "It's the divine fire descending." After saying that, she dropped the bone knife and ran out excitedly. Seeing this, I felt somewhat disappointed in my heart, but since that's the case, I'd better quickly find a way to escape. I cut the vines on my body, walked out of the cave, looking at the boundless primitive jungle before me, and the faint roars of fierce beasts in the distance. I was completely dumbfounded. If I left recklessly, I would definitely die a horrible death. It seems I can only stay for now. Of course, this is definitely not because I am reluctant to leave that 18-year-old lowly. Then I stepped forward to look for Ulala. Soon I saw her and a group of primitive people in animal skins, kneeling and worshipping a tree trunk struck by lightning and set on fire. At this moment, Ulala also happened to see me. She picked up a piece of a burning wooden stick and ran quickly to me. "How did you run out? But you are really lucky. You just came to the tribe and encountered the divine fire descending. Today we can eat cooked meat." Ulala happily took my hand and walked towards the cave. But suddenly, an extremely robust man blocked our way. Frowning, he said coldly, "A snatched man like you does not deserve to use the divine fire bestowed upon the tribe by heaven. Yulikan, he is my man, and also a member of this tribe. What right do you have to forbid him from using the divine fire?" Yulikan revealed a look of disdain. "Only the weak would be knocked unconscious by a woman. The weak do not deserve to use the divine fire." Ulala immediately became furious, but before she could speak, Yulikan continued, "Ulala, what on earth is not good about me? Why must you bring him back?" Hearing this, Ulala directly hooked onto my arm and said righteously, "He is better looking than you." Yulikan immediately flew into a rage and roared at me, "I want to duel with you." Hearing this, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. "A one-on-one? I'm afraid I'd kill you with one shot." "And bullshit divine fire. Let me tell you, I can have as much of this stuff as I want," Yulikan said with a ferocious face. "Everyone has seen it, right? This guy actually dares to blaspheme heaven. If we don't drive this person away, heaven will definitely send down disasters." Seeing the fleeting look of smugness in Yulikan's eyes, I really wanted to shoot this guy dead. But after all, I'm unfamiliar with the place and the people. I'd better hold back for now. As for why I have a gun, it's because I was executing a mission before I traveled here, so my sidearm and backpack were also brought over. Thinking like this, I asked Ulala to find some animal skins and some dry weeds. I then used the bone knife to sharpen a piece of wood, and I said to Yulikan, "Hillbilly, let me show you what drilling wood to make fire is." Then, under the puzzled gazes of the crowd, I started rubbing the wooden stick crazily, but even though I pierced through the animal skins, I only rubbed out a few wisps of white smoke. I sighed. This drilling wood to make fire is really not easy to succeed. Seeing this, Yulikan instantly sneered. "I thought you were so formidable. Turns out you are just performing how to damage animal skins here. You don't need to teach this. I can do it casually," Yulikan said while taking out a piece of animal skin and tearing it directly into two halves. "I think you are just fooling everyone here. Come men, drive him out of our tribe." The next moment, people surrounded me. Only Ulala firmly stood in front of me. "Whoever dares to touch my man, I will fight them to the death." Seeing this scene, I also sighed inwardly. Women in this primitive era are really stubborn, but quite cute nevertheless. Then I reached into my pocket and took out a bullet. "What are you rushing for? That was just a warm-up. Now is the official start." Unscrewing the casing of the bullet, after sprinkling the gunpowder inside into the wooden groove, I started to crazily rub the wooden stick again. Soon a wisp of white smoke curled upwards. Then with a sudden crackle, the dry grass was ignited. Congratulations to the host for activating the Primitive World Scientific Research System. Host has completed the achievement of drilling wood to make fire. Rewarded with a set of friction wheel and friction stick. Can accelerate the rotation speed of the wooden cone. Impressive improving the success rate of drilling wood to make fire. After a brief silence, the tribe erupted into a world-shaking cheer. Divine fire, it's divine fire. He actually ignited the divine fire. Thank the heavens. He must be a divine envoy sent by heaven. Hearing the praises of the clansmen, Ulala's little head involuntarily raised up. With hands on her hips, she proudly looked around. Weren't you trying to drive my man away just now? Hearing this, everyone showed a look of embarrassment. It was all our fault. We almost drove away the divine envoy. We apologized to the divine envoy. But at this time, Ulican suddenly shouted, "Everyone, don't be fooled by him. Think about it carefully. How could a powerful god be knocked unconscious and brought back to the tribe by a little girl? He must be a thief who stole the seed of the divine fire. If we keep this thief, heaven will definitely send down divine punishment." Hearing this, Ulala immediately became furious. "Bullshit, stop slandering people here. You just intentionally want to drive my man away." A trace of guilt flashed in the depths of Ulican's eyes, but he quickly covered it up. "I am just discussing the facts. Besides, this thief not only stole the divine fire, he also stole your heart. Think about it, how long have you two known each other? If he didn't steal your heart, how could you help him like this?" At this moment, the way the tribe members looked at me began to change. Sure enough, in this uncivilized primitive era, human awe of heaven surpassed everything. Soon, the crowd clamored again with indignation for me to get out. Seeing this, I walked towards the outside of the tribe without any reluctance. "Man, I will go with you." Under the indignant gazes of the crowd, Ulala firmly caught up with me. Looking at the resolute Ulala, a wave of being touched surged in my heart, though there were 1,000 words to say. In the end, I only squeezed out an okay. Not long after leading the tribe, a heavy rain poured down. Ulala and I could only find a nearby cave to shelter in first. When I lit up a bonfire again, Ulala said with a face full of excitement, "Man, you are awesome, with you around. I won't have to eat raw meat anymore in the future. What's wrong with you?" Just as I was about to speak, a nosebleed suddenly spurted out uncontrollably, because at this moment, Ulala had already taken off some of the animal skins on her body. I hurriedly turned my head away from looking at her. "Why are you taking off your clothes?" But Ulala completely didn't care and said, "Of course, to take them off and dry them. Besides, you are my man. What does it matter?" "Of course it matters. You are still young, and we aren't married yet." Ulala showed a look of confusion. "Marriage? What is that? Besides, I am not young. If you don't believe me, look." As Ulala spoke, she was about to pull off the animal skin covering her crucial parts. Seeing this, I hurriedly pressed down her hand. In fact, I am not some saint who can remain unperturbed with a woman in his lap. But this charming young girl in front of me has already sacrificed so much for me. I cannot just seek temporary pleasure and disregard the girl's safety. After all, this is primitive society. If the two of us were to conceive a new life, then what awaits Ulala would be a life or death tribulation. However, wearing wet clothes is indeed uncomfortable. So I, while spraying nosebleeds, used the wet clothes I took off to build a barrier between the two of us. The half-hidden scenery kept emerging. Suddenly Ulala stood up abruptly. "You're really dishonest. Don't think I don't know. You've been peeking for a long time. I really don't understand why what you say is different from what you do." As Ulala spoke, she shoved away the barrier separating us and walked straight toward me. Having been exposed, my face instantly flushed red. Then I felt a pushing force, pushing me straight to the ground. A vibrant body unceremoniously pressed down on me. I could even clearly feel two restless little hands roaming all over my body. Just as I was about to sink into it, a discordant voice came from outside the cave. "Thief, roll out here for me." Hearing this, Ulala grabbed her dried clothes, put them on, and rushed toward the cave entrance furiously. "Which blind bastard dares to ruin my good time? If my man was scared crooked by your shout, I won't let you off." Arriving outside the cave, we saw the shouting person was exactly Ulican, along with the tribe's chief. Ulican looked at the disheveled Ulala, and his face instantly turned ugly. "What were you doing in there? Can't you tell? We were preparing to make babies inside. I'll kill you." Ulican lifted his bone spear and prepared to charge at me, but was stopped by an old man leaning on a cane. The old man was exactly the tribe's chief, Uladen. "I won't beat around the bush either, because you stole the fire seed. It caused the heavens to rage and send down a rainstorm, taking back the divine fire that descended previously. So you must take responsibility for this." Hearing this, I was shocked. The rain from the sky put out the fire, and this can also be blamed on me? Uladen said righteously. "Of course." Seeing this, I got angry, and frankly, "Just say it, what do you want?" Just when Uladen was about to continue negotiating with me, an exceptionally burly strongman stepped forward. "Chief, why even talk nonsense with him? Just snatch the fire seed away directly." After saying that, regardless of Uladen's agreement, he directly lifted two huge ancient axes and chopped towards my forehead. I easily dodged Ulaming's giant axe, but Ulaming remained relentless, looking like he wouldn't stop until he hacked me to death, even ignoring the stopping voice of Alashan next to him, and paid absolutely no attention. And at this moment, the corners of Yulikin's mouth curled up slightly. He secretly thought in his heart, this is exactly the way Ulaming hacked this kid to death. Even a clay figurine has 3 parts anger, let alone me. If you keep being so aggressive, don't blame me if you lose your life. Looking at the disheveled me, Ulaming, however, was full of disdain. Come on then, you. I beg you to kill me. Many apes on the side laughed unscrupulously. With your tiny physique, you still want to kill Ulaming. Ha ha ha, I'm afraid he's already been frightened stupid. That's why he's having these wild fantasies here. In a moment, I was forced into a corner by Ulaming, with nowhere to escape. Seeing that I was about to die, Ulala was about to rush over and stand in front of me, but she was grabbed by Yulikin. Don't go over, it's dangerous. Don't touch me, I need to save my man. Although Ulala struggled desperately, she still couldn't shake off Yulikin's hand. The ape men were also watching this scene jokingly. Suddenly, an abrupt sound spread to everyone's ears present. Bang! With a gunshot, the scene of my blood splattering from being slashed did not appear. Instead, I leaned against the rock wall and wiped the sweat from my forehead. That was close, almost lost my life. Then, Ulaming fell to the ground in response, with a hole in his forehead constantly oozing blood. How is this possible? Ulaming is dead. At this moment, everyone present was dumbfounded. It was Yulikin who reacted first. This is sorcery. Let's attack together. Kill this sorcerer, and avenge Ulaming. Looking at the excited group of ape men, I was also a bit panicked at this moment. After all, there were simply too many of them, and I only had 5 bullets left. But I still pretended to be calm and blew on the smoking gun muzzle. Whoever dares to take a step forward will end up like this big guy. For a moment, everyone was deterred by my aura, and at the same time, towards the fire-breathing box in my hand, filled with fear. Everyone, don't be afraid. Attack together. How could Yulikin let go of such a good opportunity? Regardless of whether others would be like Ulaming, beaten to death, he only wanted to kill me now. Stop it. Do you all want to die? Just when everyone was about to make a move, Ulashin also spoke up, looking at me with fear. At this time, Ulashin also had a depressed face. He originally just wanted to get some tinder and leave, but he didn't expect things to escalate to this point. He didn't know how many more times that box could spray fire. Naturally, he did not dare to gamble with his clansmen's lives, but leaving just like this seemed too embarrassing. Just when Ulashin was in a dilemma, I took out a torch from the cave and handed it to Ulashin. Here is the tinder for you, but I hope you don't come back. Not because I'm afraid of you, but I just don't like trouble. If this big guy hadn't tried to kill me, I wouldn't have killed him either. I hope you behave yourselves. Ulashin took the torch directly. What you said makes some sense. Ulaming indeed went too far in this matter. So Ulashin turned his head and said to everyone, this matter ends here. Everyone returned to the tribe. Chief, are we just going to forget about Ulaming's revenge? What Yulikin never expected was that the chief who had always favored him actually showed a disappointed look towards him for the first time. Don't think I don't know your little schemes. Ulaming is already dead. Do you still want other clansmen to die because of your selfishness and throw their lives away? If it wasn't, perhaps our tribe could have added an outstanding member. The tribe could also become stronger because of this. But after he finished speaking, he left with the people of the Ula tribe without looking back. Hearing this, Yulikin's face froze. Then he looked at me with a resentful face. You just wait. And then he left with the others. It's safe now. Ulala grabbed me and dragged me into the cave. Man, let's go. Let's continue to make babies. Nobody is bothering us now. Stop messing around. There's business to do. Don't you feel that this cave is not only small in space, but also very damp? Ulala glanced at the environment in the cave, nodded and said, the environment is indeed very poor, but it doesn't matter. Tomorrow we will go find a better cave. Hearing this, I immediately raised an eyebrow and said proudly, a cave? With me here, do we still need to live in a cave? As soon as these words came out, it immediately made Ulala feel somewhat odd without understanding. If we don't live in a cave, where do we live? Without the shelter of the cave, those wild beasts that appear at night could tear us to pieces. No need for a cave. I'll take you to live in a house. In the future, I can even take you to live in a villa. Looking at my smug look, Ulala tilted her head, asked, house? What is a house? The corner of my mouth twitched, but I quickly put on a mysterious look. You will know very soon. Following that, the two came to the seaside and started frantically picking up shells and conches. During this time, we also encountered a few small beasts, but they were all turned into rations for the two of us by Ulala. It wasn't that I felt at ease letting off a woman, but unfortunately, I was just a weakling in this primitive era and couldn't catch any prey at all. After many failures, I also gave up. At the same time, I kept comforting myself in my heart. I make a living with my brain. After a whole half day of busyness, the two filled a corner of the cave, then crushed all these shells and ground them into powder. Looking at the white powder in my hand, at this time, I seemed particularly excited. I of all things recognition. Name, calcium carbonate CaCO3. Description, a common inorganic compound. ground. It's a function of salt evaporation, construction, agriculture, metallurgy, chemical industry, environmental protection. These things are the key to our future life. Then the two started a big fire again, and baked all the calcium carbonate once. Finally, I dug some mud and sand. After mixing the two together, the system's voice rang in my mind as expected. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully achieving the mortar-making achievement. Obtained physical fitness enhancement. Obtained house building technology. Hearing the obtained rewards, I instantly smiled from ear to ear. These two skills are exactly what I need the most. I have all things recognition. Mortar, the rudimentary form of cement. Function, can be used for building houses. Looking at me giggling all the time, Ulala asked somewhat curiously, "What makes you so happy?" Hearing this, I said with a mysterious face, "You've also been tired for most of the day. Hurry up and rest. Leave the rest to me." Okay, although very curious in her heart, but Ulala still honestly stayed in the cave to rest without asking another word, because she absolutely trusted her man. After a long time, I walked into the cave with a tired face, but my face was full of excitement. Ding! Congratulations to the host for achieving the first treehouse in the primitive era. Achievement, obtain primitive fighting skills. Obtain trap making technology. Obtain farming skills. Seeing this scene, it really broke Ulala's heart. Man, are you tired? Leave whatever work there is for tomorrow. I'll go get you something to eat first. Looking at Ulala's expression full of heartache and care, my heart couldn't help but warm up. Follow me, then. I took Ulala to the entrance of the cave, next to a big tree not far away, and Ulala looked around with a confused face. "Where's the house you talked about?" Look up. Right at the moment Ulala looked up, an extremely exquisite treehouse appeared before her eyes. "This is a house?" I proudly said. "Yes, that's right. This is the empire I built for you. The first treehouse in the primitive world." Who knew Ulala was surprised again, then asked, "And what is Jin?" I was a bit embarrassed. "You seem to have missed the point." "Forget it. Let me take you and have a look first." The two followed the wooden pegs driven into the tree trunk, and arrived at the door of the treehouse. In Ulala's big eyes, filled with disbelief, curiously looking around. "Man, is this built by you? Is this a house?" I proudly nodded. After touching the hard material on the outside of the treehouse, Ulala repeatedly exclaimed in surprise. "The exterior of this house is as hard as stone, and it's on a tree. Much better than living in a cave. Those wild beasts basically can't get in, because generally powerful beasts basically can't climb trees, and the beasts that can climb trees are too weak, and basically cannot destroy this room. Now we have a residence. It's time to go out and look for suitable crops for farming." Thinking of this, I said to Ulala, "I'll go out for a trip tomorrow. You wait for me at home." "No way," Ulala refused without even thinking. "Man, you are really too weak. Going out alone will definitely get you eaten by wild beasts." I heard this, looked at Ulala with a thought-provoking face. "Wanna spar?" Ulala heard that I wanted to spar with her, and immediately burst out laughing. "No way." My face immediately darkened, and then I attacked Ulala, because previously, I had obtained a physical fitness enhancement and primitive fighting skills. This move really scared Ulala. In just a moment, Ulala was subdued by me and pinned to the ground. "Am I good or not? Do you submit?" I also casually pinched Ulala's little face gently. Just when I was proud, Ulala shifted from her initial surprise to a face full of charm. "Man, you suddenly became so capable. Let's make babies." After saying that, she used her small hands to gently stroke my strong and powerful wrists. Then she even stuck out the tip of her tongue and gave my palm a gentle lick. In an instant, a jolt of electricity spread throughout my entire body. A nameless evil fire quietly ignited from my lower abdomen. I am not some loose Xiaohui who can remain unperturbed with a woman in his lap, but looking at the charming girl in front of me, I understood that the girl had already sacrificed too much for me. Rationality told me I shouldn't just seek temporary pleasure and ignore the girl's safety. You know, this is the primitive society now. There are no modern advanced medical equipment and technologies, and I know nothing about this. If we were to conceive a new life, what awaits Ulala would be a life and death ordeal. This is what I cannot accept. I calmed down completely. "Man, what's wrong with you?" Ulala looked at me as I stopped my actions, and asked curiously, "Ulala, I think it's still too early for this. I want to create a safe and comfortable environment for you, and at the same time give you a perfect wedding. Although you might not understand, but please believe me, this day won't be too far away." I originally thought Ulala would be relentless. However, when I looked at Ulala again, I saw a pair of big watery eyes, looking at me affectionately. Man, although I don't understand what a wedding means, I suppose it must be a very meaningful thing. I am willing willing to respect your thoughts. I will not give up on making babies with you. If one day you can't control yourself, then you can't blame me." Hearing this, I was also caught between laughter and tears. "By the way, since you are going out tomorrow, I also need to go out for a trip." "To do what?" Facing my inquiry, Ulala just smiled slightly, then said lightly, "You don't need to worry, just handling a little matter." I saw that Ulala seemed to have something on her mind, and didn't ask too much, just said gently, "Don't force yourself when encountering things. I am here. If you come back late, I'll go look for you." In an instant, Ulala's eyes reddened. "You're so good," she then threw herself into my arms. The two just fell asleep embracing each other. Early the next morning, I picked up a bone spear, and went out to look for suitable crops to plant. Originally last night, after obtaining the primitive fighting skills, I was a bit impatient to go out and try my hand, but under Ulala's persuasion, I still gave up this idea. After all, this is the primitive era. Even though my martial power was enhanced, but compared to those powerful fierce beasts that appear at night, there was still a big gap. I didn't want to become a delicious meal for fierce beasts, and Ulala returned to the Ula tribe. Because of the previous conflict, Ulala knew deeply that I had already fallen out with the tribe. She didn't want it to be because of her own reasons that I got caught in danger, so she didn't tell me the matter of her going back to the tribe for a trip. At this time, an 8-man girl who was busy in the tribe spotted at a glance not far away Ulala walking towards the tribe, immediately hurried to greet her, grabbed Ulala's hand, and said very happily, "Ulala, you finally figured it out. Good, good. It's not too late to come back now." This girl is called Ulamiai. She is Ulala's best friend in the tribe. Ulala looked at Ulamiai, whose face was full of smiles, but said somewhat embarrassedly, "Ulamiai, I'm sorry. I came back to grab my things. I'll leave after I get them." As soon as she finished speaking, Ulamiai, who originally had a joyful face, already furrowed her beautiful brows tightly, and said to Ulala with a look of disappointment at someone failing to meet expectations, "Then I see you must have been bewitched by that man. Following such a weak man, how are you going to survive outside? I admit his fire-breathing box is very powerful, but that kind of bizarre method must definitely have some sort of limitations. You just stop making a fuss. Hurry up and come back. I believe everyone won't blame you." But no matter how Ulamiai persuaded, Ulala did not waver in the slightest, simply stated firmly that he is my man. Since I have set my heart on him, I will be with him for a lifetime. Just at this time, a man's voice rang out from not far away. "Since she doesn't want to come back, then she shouldn't come back." The two instinctively looked over, and saw a rather tall man walking towards them. The man's name was Walaka, one of the patrol captains in the tribe, and also a loyal supporter of Wulakan. "Ulala, since you have left the tribe, you are no longer someone of the tribe. I now demand you to leave here immediately. Otherwise I will consider you an intruder." While speaking, he also took down the huge bone blade tied to his back, and stabbed it forcefully into the ground. Just at this time, Ulamiai couldn't stand watching it anymore, and said angrily, "Walaka, what do you mean? What right do you have to say Ulala is not someone of the tribe? She was just misled by that thief." Facing Ulamiai's questioning, Walaka appeared not to care at all. "I don't care about anything else. I only know that she herself personally said she's leaving the tribe. Then she is already no longer someone of the tribe." Ulamiai originally wanted to continue arguing, but was interrupted by Ulala beside her. "Captain Walaka, I think you are misunderstanding. I do not mean to do anything to the tribe. I just want to take back my father and mother's left behind relics. The relics you mentioned wouldn't happen to be those ivory tusks, right?" Ulala hurriedly nodded. "Then that's even more unacceptable. That pair of ivory tusks is the relic of the tribe's former hero Walaxiu. You, as a descendant of the hero, actually betrayed the tribe for a thief. What face do you have to come take the ivory tusks?" After hearing these words, Ulamiai beside her was also severely irritated. "The tribal hero Walaxiu is Walala's father. On what grounds do you not permit her?" Before Ulamiai could even finish her words, Walaka impatiently threw a direct slap, striking Ulamiai across her face, knocking her down to the ground. Ulamiai, also due to Walaka's forceful slap, passed out directly. After Ulala checked Ulamiai's breathing, Ulala was then relieved quite a bit. Immediately after, she turned to Walaka and said angrily, "What are you doing? Ulamiai is after all still someone of the tribe. How could you strike with such a heavy hand? So what? Siding with outsiders. This slap is considered light. Bastard." Just as Ulala, out of anger, prepared to violently lash out, Walaka nonetheless appeared not to care at all. But right after, he changed his tone. "If you want the ivory tusks, it's not totally impossible. Unless... What?" Hearing Walaka seemed to have the intention of softening up, Walala hurriedly asked, "Unless you can cross the field of thorns barefoot." "What?" As soon as this was said, Walala was also startled into a cold sweat. She very well knew the terror of the field of thorns. That was a punishment method specially used against those who betrayed the tribe. The thorns in the field of thorns were covered with sharp spikes. Those who were pierced and injured first would be covered all over in red and swollen patches. Immediately following, the entire body would become unbearably, intensely itchy, unable to resist scratching the skin and flesh with their nails. All those who had been pierced in the past, without exception, all scratched their entire bodies to a bloody mess. Either they were scratched alive to a painful death, or because it was too hard to endure this kind of agony, they chose to end themselves. Seeing the terror in Walala's eyes, the corners of Walaka's mouth displayed an imperceptible smile. Then he immediately said, "You're scared. It's okay, I have a second option here. Moreover, for you it only has benefits, and no drawbacks." "What option?" Walala asked subconsciously. At once Walaka also no longer concealed it, and stated his true objective: return to the tribe, and become Wolakan's woman. At this time, more and more people gathered at the entrance to the tribe, and also one after another persuaded Walala, "Don't be stubborn, Wolakan is young and promising. How nice it would be to become his woman. It's far better than you suffering hunger and cold outside with that thief." Walala did not pay attention to the crowd, but just turned around and walked into the tribe. Just when the crowd thought Walala had thought it through, and decided to return to the tribe, the expressions of the originally smiling crowd suddenly changed, because they realized that the direction Walala was heading was exactly the field of thorns inside the tribe. "What do you mean?" Walaka, who originally had a well-thought-out plan, frowned, and asked immediately. But Walala said without the slightest hesitation, "I choose to cross the thorns barefoot." "Field? Are you crazy? Big brother Wolakan, in what way on earth is he inferior to that thief? You would rather cross the field of thorns than be willing to come back and become big brother's woman." Yet at this time Walala simply didn't care about Walaka's questioning, just stated lightly, "Even if I die, I still will not betray my man." Then without turning her head, she walked toward the field of thorns. This scene dumbfounded the surrounding onlookers who didn't know what to make of it. Even Wolakan, who had been hiding in the dark observing, was also irritated to the point of gnashing his teeth. Why? She would rather go to her death than be willing to be my woman. Why? However, right when Wolakan was gradually sinking into a state of violent rage, a sinister smile appeared upon his face. "This is fine too. When the time comes that your entire body is unbearably itchy and you can't stand it, naturally you will come to beg me. After all, in the entire tribe only I know how to relieve the agony after being pierced by the thorns. When that time comes, let's see if you won't bow your head." Ha 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 ha. At this time Walala had already arrived before the field of thorns, and took off the first shoes she was wearing on her feet. "Walala, do not do it." Walami woke up at some unknown time. A bright red slap mark still remained on her face, but she paid no attention to her own condition. The very first moment she woke up, through the mouths of other people from the tribe, she learned of the matter that Walala was about to cross the field of thorns barefoot, and hurriedly rushed over to stop her. But alas, it was already too late. At the same time as she yelled out loud, Walala had already stepped into the field of thorns. The sharp thorn spikes very quickly pierced Walala's fair and delicate feet, until fresh blood flowed out profusely. Yet Walala still endured the pain and kept walking forward. Very quickly everyone could visibly see the changes on Walala, because at this moment Walala, whether on her arms, her neck, or on her face, those red patches had all slowly begun to emerge. A feeling of extreme, unbearable itchiness crazily spread wildly across Walala's body. With a stagger, Walala fell straightforwardly into the field of thorns. Her entire body was pierced until battered and exhausted. Yet Walala still had not given up. Forcing herself to endure the itchiness on her body, she climbed back up, while rubbing the itchy spots on her body, while walking step by step toward the front. Seeing this scene, even a person like Walaka, who was accustomed to seeing life and death, could not help but admire Walala's willpower from the bottom of his heart. Truly worthy of being the woman Big Brother has set his sights on. If she can truly become Big Brother's woman, whether it's her status as a descendant of a hero, or this tenacious personality, both can provide enormous assistance for Big Brother to inherit the position of the next leader. Thud, right while Walaka was deep in thought, a sound of a hard object hitting the ground interrupted his train of thoughts. Walaka fixed his gaze to look, and his eyes widened drastically. She actually accomplished it. She actually walked across the field of thorns barefoot. That's right, Walala, relying on her extraordinary willpower, had walked past the field of thorns. One must know even a big man like Walaka couldn't guarantee being able to reach this extent. But Walala wasn't feeling okay at all. The moment she passed the field of thorns, she collapsed onto the ground, right upon her originally smooth skin. There were already wounds completely filling it. The animal pelt covering her entire body was also stained bright red. Of course, this was still not enough to knock down Walala. The most lethal thing was still that bone-piercing intense itchiness. At this moment, Walala could no longer endure it anymore, and started frantically clawing and scratching her own skin. Seeing this situation, Walamiai, whose face was already red from crying, hurriedly rushed forward and pinned down Walala's hands. Using a tone that was exceptionally pleading, addressing Walaka, she stated, "Walala has already passed the trial. I beg you to save her. Doesn't Wolakan know how to relieve this kind of agony? Hurry up and invite him over here." Facing Walamiai's pleas, Walaka did not make the slightest movement, just stated coldly, "On what grounds do I seek Big Brother to save her? She is not related to Big Brother in any way, unless she is willing to be Big Brother's woman." Hearing Walaka's demand, Walamiai also hurriedly addressed Walala, saying, "Walala, did you hear that? As long as you are willing to become Wolakan's woman, you can be saved." "No, I don't want them to rescue me. I only want the ivory tusks my father left behind." Hearing Walala's response, Walamiai's face was completely full of disbelief, because to her way of thinking, this demand is simply thoroughly beneficial and not harmful at all for Walala. Not only can it save her own life, she can also find a strong man to act as someone to rely on. Furthermore, this man still has the potential to become the tribe's next leader. What is not good about this? But looking at Walala, who was struggling non-stop, yet absolutely unwilling to give an inch, Walamiai continued to plead, even if she's unwilling to be Wolakan's woman, but she is after all the descendant of the tribal hero. If it wasn't for Walala's father risking his life to slaughter the mammoth, the tribe would have been destroyed long ago. Could it be that this is still not sufficient for Wolakan to lend a hand and administer aid to Walala? Yet what Walamiai never expected was, Walaka, however, remained unmoved even so.